Folks at home, welcome back to the Crimson Oak Pond, and if you're new to this series, we built this 5-acre pond over the past year, and it took us several months to get all of the dirt excavated, and we had to bring in several truckloads of clay. And we also built an island, a dock, and got all the structure in place, and then it took a couple of months to get it full of water. After that, we stocked it with a bunch of bait fish, including bluegills and threadfin shad, and not long after that, we stocked it with these little 2-inch aggressive bass. And we're going to be giving you an update on them here in just a minute and showing you how big they've gotten. But before we get into that, we're going to give you a quick update on Moby. If you missed our last video, we moved Moby from the 300-gallon aquarium into the backyard pond. Happy to say he's doing great and getting along good with all the other fish. We'll be giving you an update on him here in just a minute. But over the past month, we've developed an algae problem out at the pond. And we've taken 2 steps to help solve it. The first thing we did was add a beneficial bacteria that competes with the algae and starves it out. We also ran several tests on the water, and all of our water parameters checked out just fine. So the next step is to add a bunch of algae eaters. And the fish truck just showed up with 1,000 tilapia. And tilapia are perfect for this problem because they feed heavily on aquatic vegetation and the 2 types of filamentous algae that we have in the pond. So the first thing we got to do is get a pump set up, and we're actually pumping some of the pond water into the tank, and that'll help them get acclimated to the water. And there's a big variety of different sized tilapia in here, but here's a quick look at what they look like. And in the last video I mentioned that we were going to add the tilapia, and there were a lot of our subscribers that were concerned because tilapia can be an invasive species in a lot of areas. And the main reason for that is tilapia are known to be prolific spawners and in the right conditions can spawn every 17 days. But there's a couple of reasons that tilapia are perfect for our situation, and the first and most important is that tilapia cannot survive in water temperature that is below 55 degrees. So before we built the 5-acre pond, I traveled around to several different lakes that were managed specifically for growing big largemouth bass. And I would say that probably 90% of them all stock tilapia. Because not only do they help with issues like algae, but by spawning as often as 17 days, they're creating a lot of forage fish for the largemouths. So there will be an abundance of small tilapia that the bass can feed on throughout the summer months, and then as soon as the winter rolls around and the water cools off, the tilapia can't survive and therefore can't become an invasive species. But there are a couple of fascinating facts about tilapia, and one of the reasons they can become invasive and spawn so frequently is because they can change sex. So the males can become females and the females can become males. And another really interesting fact is that there's a specific species of tilapia that is a mouth brooder. And so what happens is after the females lay the eggs, the males fertilize them, and once the baby tilapia hatch, the small tilapia will actually swim into the male's mouth, and he'll carry them around protecting them as well as taking them to their food source. So he'll bring them to the areas that are heavy in vegetation and algae and plankton and open his mouth to let them come out and feed, but the moment there's any danger in the area, he sucks them back in to protect them. So tilapia really are a fascinating fish. You can see one of them doing his job already. He found the first little patch of algae and is getting to work. But tilapia are a lot like bass and bluegills when it comes to spawning. They typically build their nest in a shallow area of the pond. And they're not colonial nesters like the bluegills, so they won't all be bunched up, but they tend to have bigger nests, kind of like a bass. So here over the next 2 weeks, we'll probably see them start spawning, and I'll keep you updated in the upcoming videos. But we do have some positive news with the algae. That beneficial bacteria is working, and you can see a lot of that algae is decomposing down on the bottom of the pond. So everything seems to be working good, and that's our goal, is to have it die off slowly so we don't create any oxygen issues. And if you look closely, you'll see some little bass fry hanging out down there. So some of them have made it. Now it's time to check you in on Mr. Moby. He's been doing good in the backyard pond, and if Milo knew how vicious he was, he probably wouldn't be drinking out of the water. It looks like Moby's contemplating. But last week we installed this divider in the pond just to ease Moby's transition into the pond and make sure he didn't have any extra stress from the other fish. But today we're going to be removing that and seeing how he interacts with all the different fish. So last week the turtle came by to see him, and you could tell he was very interested in the turtle because you have to keep in mind we caught Moby when he was about 2 inches long, and he's lived in an aquarium his whole life, so he hasn't seen other species of fish. But I do think he's taken a liking to our black crappie that we call Outlaw. They've been hanging out in the shallow area a bunch, and you can even see the turtles coming out of the cave in the background. And this is Moby's first time ever checking out Clyde's Cove. If you guys can recall, that's where Clyde spent 90% of his time hanging out in the cave. And that seems to be a pretty popular hotspot today. There's a good look at one of the Ninja Turtles. And back to fighting over the cave. Clyde would be proud. And he's making his rounds again now that the sun's coming out this morning. So far, he seems to be getting along with all the fish. Even got a little yawn out of Moby. And one of my favorite parts about living near the Gulf is that it's home to the blue crab. So this time of year we like to set some crab traps, and if the tide's just right, it can lead to a cooler full of blue crabs. So today I'm going to be showing you some of my favorite blue crab recipes, including jumbo lump crab cakes, as well as a marinated crab meat recipe called West Indies. And this video is brought to you by Kamikoto knives. We've been using these knives since we started the pond build, and I'm still extremely impressed with them. They're made out of high quality Japanese steel, and they always have a very sharp edge. So for the crab cakes, you want to start out with 1 egg, 2 tablespoons of mayo, 1/4 cup of cornmeal, and some green onions, and you want to get all of that mixed together in a bowl with your crab meat. Next up, I like to add some olive oil to a cast iron skillet, and when the oil gets hot, use a teaspoon to drop your crab meat in. And while those cook, I'm going to show you one other recipe that you can use with any of the leftover crab meat. But it's very simple. You just take a 1/2 cup of apple cider vinegar, 1/4 cup of oil, some green onions, and whatever seasoning you prefer. I like Tony's. Get all that mixed together, and it's ready to serve. But the Kamikoto knives come in several different sets, but our favorite is probably the Kampeki. It seems to be perfect for our needs. It comes with a 7-inch vegetable knife, a 8.5-inch slicing knife, and a 5-inch utility knife. But don't just take it from me. These knives are used by Michelin star chefs all across the world. And they also come in this nice wooden box, which makes it perfect for a gift. So if you're interested in checking them out, I'll put a link down in the video description that'll give you $50 off a knife set. Now it's time for an update on the prawn pond. We got some interesting stuff going on here today, and the first is that there's fish swimming around in the pond. Obviously, we didn't stock any fish in here. Usually fish eggs get transferred over from birds, or in our case, maybe our pet ducks. So hopefully these aren't bass or bluegills, or else we may be short on some prawns this year. So I initially stocked 2,500 post-larva prawn in this stock tank, but now that they've gotten bigger, it's time to transfer them to the pond. And so these guys get to ride the Crimson Oak roller coaster. But the main reason for moving the prawns is they're a shrimp-like species, and you can only grow so many pounds per gallon of water. And it's not that high. You can actually grow 1 pound of prawn per 100 gallons. And another interesting fact about the prawns is they're cannibals. So some species will have their growth limited by the volume of water they live in, but not prawns. They continue to eat and will actually eat each other if there's too many of them in a small body of water. So even though we overfeed them with protein pellets, it's in the shrimp's nature to eliminate some of its competition. And as you can see here, one of our male prawns earlier this year was probably approaching a pound itself. So that would mean he would need to live in a 100-gallon tank. So that is the one downside of prawn farming. You need a lot of volume of water to grow them out. But the good thing for us is that once they hit 3 to 4 inches, we're moving them out of this little small pond into the 5-acre pond, where they're basically going to become a forage for the bass. So we may have some of them reach that full adult size, but probably not many with these aggressive tiger bass. You can see there's some big ones down in there that have grown bigger than the others. Alright, we've suctioned most of them out. We're going to take a dip net and scoop the remaining prawns out and move them over to the pond. This is my first time ever dealing with prawns, but they are fascinating little creatures. Now it's time to refill the prawn feeder. I'm feeding them the same pellets that we fed the bait fish and bluegills whenever they were getting started. Little protein snacks. And here in the next month or so, we're going to start trapping some of them out when they get a little bigger to feed them to the bass out there. And I've got a couple different type of traps. Basically, they swim in through there to get to their feed, and then they can't get out of the bottom. Same thing with this style. But I've never trapped prawns before, so it's either going to be that or lowering the water level and netting them out. So if any of you guys out there have trapped prawns in the past, let me know what works best. Now I'm going to do a test run to show you guys what it's like whenever we feed them. This is just 1 second worth of feed. So I was having a little issue with the pellet feeder, and as I was looking down in there to see what was clogging it up, turns out it was a wasp nest. So no better way to get rid of it than to just sling it out into the pond. Man, this feeder was home to a lot of little critters. Not only was it the wasp nest, check out the little frog that was living in there. Now let's check in on some of the wildlife out at the pond, and one of them that I've been enjoying watching lately is the osprey. Mostly because our water is dirtied up a little bit and they have not been successful at all at catching our fish. But one of the cool things about the osprey is they dive head first, but right at the last second they swap around and go feet first to try to grab the fish. I had to put it in slow motion to see it, but they definitely homed in their diving technique. And the ospreys are an extremely old species, and they've been around for more than 11 million years, so they've had plenty of time to become a good fisherman. But they're also migratory, so some of the birds that are around here, this may not be their home, but even though they migrate, they always return back home during nesting season, so we'll find out soon if these nest around here. And I'm sure at some point, either an osprey or an eagle, or maybe even the owls, are going to build a nest up there on the eagle tower. And this guy looks like he's taking a dip in the water to get a little drink. But they have been a lot of fun to watch. And speaking of nesting season, he wasn't successful getting any fish, so I guess he decided it was time to work on building the nest. So most likely these do live around here. Now it's time to check in on our pet ducks. We raised these up from little baby ducklings, and they've been enjoying the life out here on the pond. So I set up a little duck cam right here at their feeding station to see how they adapted in their new environment. And we have our daily version of the crow wars. They're always battling over the pellets, and typically whichever one has the bigger numbers wins. So sometimes they run the crows off, but the crows go get back up, and then they run the ducks off. Nice little sunrise shot of the crows feeding this morning. And little Peter Rabbit stops by every night, especially when no enemies are around. And you can see the great blue heron in the background sitting on top of the duck nest. And the bandit raccoons coming through. And it looks like these two are being a little competitive. And a pregnant doe stopping by to check out the duck pellets. And after everybody left, Peter finally got to hop in the bowl and eat whatever was left over. Alright folks, time for my favorite part of this pond build, and that's because it's time to go fishing. So we're going to catch some of these aggressive bass out here, and every fish we've caught since we built the pond, we've tagged it. So the first thing we do when we catch one is we scan it to see if it's been tagged before. If not, we'll put a new pit tag in it, and then we'll log the data in our spreadsheet. And that's basically the weight, the length, what we caught it on, and what location we caught out here. And we've already had some interesting catches. We've caught one fish 3 times now, but since it's late in the afternoon, we're going to try to catch him on top water today. And if that doesn't work, we'll go with a little underspin. And a couple weeks ago when we came out here fishing, they were piled in around that well where we're pumping water in, so we're going to start out there today. Ooh, big blow up. Right there, first cast. Hit it twice. Man, missed them both. Oh, look at there. 4 strikes. Finally got caught up to it. That was awesome. 4 strikes on 1 cast. Now I want you to pay special attention to this fish because something pretty incredible happens here in just a second. You can even see that little mark or indicator right there on the side of his mouth. Alright, we got a fish that's been tagged before. 57.570000. This fish weighs 1.52. Alright, let's see which fish this is. Man, this feels like a good one. Nice one. Yes, sir. That's a good looking fish right there. Caught it off that deep hump. Alright. No way! I'm telling you, this 57000 is literally the fish I just caught. I caught it, threw it back, and then caught it again. There's no point in weighing it or measuring it again. It's the exact same fish I just caught. That's unbelievable how this is the second time that's happened. Caught a fish, released it, and then 5 minutes later, caught the exact same fish. 57,000, you are one aggressive bass. So the most aggressive bass award goes to Apollo. This is actually the 4th time we caught him, and he mostly hangs out in front of the dock and will eat pretty much anything that comes near him. Got him. Who we got here? Oh, I got a double. Oh, I had a double. Look at there. There's another one swimming right there with it. Look at it. That's crazy. He keeps flashing at it. Man, that would have been wild to have our first double up. Alright, no tag in this one. And its new tag is 570315. Alright, and this fish weighs 1.21. Got him. This fish has not been caught. And 571185. Alright, we're gonna put this guy a little over a pound. Got him. Man, they are eating it up right there on that. Skinny little male. Alright, this fish has not been caught. Right at 13 inches. And his tag is 570325. We'll put it in about 1.25 pounds. Right at the dock. Biggest one of the day. Come on in here, big girl. Nice fish. Alright, this fish has been caught before. 570148. 14 inches. And she weighs 1.74 pounds. That's officially the biggest bass we've caught out of the Crimson Oak Pond so far. Now this fish is named Flipper, and we caught it 6 months ago in roughly the same spot. But the interesting thing about it is it gained exactly 1 pound in 6 months, which is perfect. As I've mentioned in the past, we're shooting for a 2-pound growth rate per year for these tiger bass. Got him. Alright, this fish has not been caught. 12 3/4 inches. We'll put it in there right at about 1.15 pounds. So here's a quick look at the updated spreadsheet. If you see a blank spot, feel free to leave a fish name comment down below. If you've seen it in the past, we're doing a lot of giveaways and prizes. And if you name a fish, he'll basically compete for you. And a lot of fun stuff coming up with that. So I stopped by one of our local aquatic shops today, and they've got some really nice koi ponds and a big variety of aquatic plants. And although we can't add these plants to the 5-acre pond, I'm going to start putting some of them in the prawn pond. Because as most of you probably heard, this November, after all the prawns get moved into the 5-acre pond, Aquascape's coming to turn the prawn pond into a pond like we have in our backyard, with a waterfall, sandy beach area. So I'm going to go ahead and get some plants and start getting them acclimated into our area. So I got a variety of different lily pads, and one of the first things I'm going to do is add some lily tabs into their bucket. Just take them and insert them right down there in the soil, and that helps them survive the transfer and grow quicker. Alright, I got the first little batch put in the corner, and those will multiply quick. Alright, we just got a special delivery of 1,000 golden shiners in for Moby. It's about to be feeding time, so we're going to put them in and get them acclimated. And hopefully he don't try to tear through the bag. There he is, sitting down there under the ledge. He's coming out to get a little sunshine. Alright, it's feeding time, Moby. Got some better sized ones. Eat up, Moby. Little bluegills down there on a bed. Alright, not sure if Moby's in an eating mood or not, but I got some cameras set up underwater. We're going to go ahead and add the shiners. Some big boys. Perfect size for Moby. And unfortunately, Moby acted a little camera shy today, but I'll tell you who was not camera shy, and that's the turtles. I probably watched one of these guys eat about 20 shiners. And somebody else that's going to be eating them tonight is the big bullfrog. I finally captured him on camera. He is thick. Alright, we're down here at the pea patch. I usually keep this whole area out here planted in peas in the winter and then soybeans in the summer and fall. So I may be a little bit late on planting soybeans this year. It's kind of our wildlife area. We even have a stand over there. We can sit and watch the deer come out. So this year I'm probably also going to set up a feeder right here. We have a trail cam right there. That's the main trail that they use to come in and out of the creek. So now's the time to start feeding them pretty heavily with the protein. They're just now growing all their antlers back, and that'll help them with that growth. Now we're going to start filling up all the feeders. And today I'm going to try out Antler Magnet. It is basically a mix between peanuts, roasted soybeans, and corn. Boy, this stuff sure does smell good. We got our small field cut. Gonna get it planted soon, but we'll go ahead and put out some protein for them, and we'll watch and see what comes out this afternoon. So we had a nice looking little bachelor group of bucks show up this afternoon. You can see those antlers just starting to pop out. And to be honest, I think they like the peanuts and the corn. But we always plant soybeans in this area, and in the past it's been a buck magnet. Something about that little bit of extra protein that gets them to stop by every day. And if you notice the black area down around the bottom of their legs, that's because most of these deer live in the swampy area in the woods just past the pond. They spend most of their time down there and pretty much only come out whenever there's some food drawing them out of there. But all this protein feed's got the possum we call George Jones looking kind of stocky. And the coon's on cleanup duty. If you live in the south, most likely you've been affected by some of these storms here lately, and this last one dumped a ton of rain into the pond. It's the first time we've ever overflowed the rain gauge, so we got over 5 inches in the last day. And it's rare, but we actually have water going over the spillway pipe. But the thing that I'm happy with is all that dirt work we did to raise the pond dam up earlier this spring has held up perfect to these storms, which makes me sleep a lot better at night. But we've pretty much filled the prawn pond up to the max. So we always keep it a couple of feet low because there's not a spillway on this pond. We didn't want any of the water draining into the 5-acre pond and putting the prawns in there before we were ready. And we installed this drainage system to prevent a lot of that water from shedding into the prawn pond. So it basically hits this drain and then it carries it through a pipe down to the 5-acre pond. So luckily we had this here. Or the prawns will be swimming in the 5-acre pond now. Alright, Tiger's getting bigger, so we're going to feed him a little bit bigger shiner tonight. This is probably the last feeding in his 55-gallon aquarium because he'll be moving to the 300 next week. But these shiners are a good bit bigger, and he's ready for them. Let's see what he thinks about them. Alright folks, that's going to wrap up this video. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. We got a lot of exciting things coming up here in the next few weeks. But I hope y'all enjoyed this one, and we will see you all next time.